Hi, I'm Fred McNeil, and thank you for watching QA-TV 7. We do a weekly show called Thank You for Your Service. On this show, we interview some of the 3,353 veterans who live right here in Queen Anne's County, and their friends, their spouses, their children. And we like to share their experience with veterans, but more importantly, their own lives, as we're all getting a little gray, I guess. Some of these stories are disappearing. So, ma'am, thank you for coming. How about introduce yourself to the audience, please?
I'm Judith Webster, and I'm the daughter of a sailor and the widow of an Air Force pilot.
Now, Judy, let's go way back. Born and raised where?
In Washington, D.C.
Oh, D.C.
I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian. Northwest.
Where in Northwest? How's 36th Street Northwest, right by the WTOP Tower?
I was lower Northwest.
Okay. More Georgetown-ish?
Not at Georgetown. It was 1315 Clifton Street.
Oh, I know. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's more towards the National Cathedral, or no? I
No.
could be totally wrong. No. Doesn't matter. We're Washingtonians. Doctor's Hospital. Where were you born?
Garfield
Oh,
Hospital.
Garfield. Both which have been torn down. We want to tell the audience, right?
Right.
All right. Where'd you go to high school in D.C.?
Mackin, which was
Sure.
Catholic school.
I know Mackin, yes. Okay.
My father had gone there when it was St. Paul's Academy,
Okay.
and it became Mackin and all high school. I went there from the first grade all
Okay.
through the 12th.
Well, my dad grew up in Anacostia. His dad moved from North Carolina. Well, do you ever, we'll pull something out of our hats, McNeil Pontiac? For the best deal, see McNeil, right on Wisconsin Avenue.
No, I don't remember
That was the McNeil. It used to be McNeil Studebaker. Then it went to McNeil Pontiac. And then they made too much money and they retired and did nothing. So, okay, you go to Mackin. Where'd you go after Mackin?
I went to work.
Where were we working? Right at Mackin?
My first job was Coast Guard headquarters.
Now, give me a year. Give me a year.
Would be
Roughly.
1956.
Okay, so this is Cold War era. Korean War era, or a little later? Earlier? Later? It was after the Korean War?
Yes.
Okay. But you were in the midst of the Cold War.
Right.
So what in the world were you doing with the Coast Guard?
Well, I went to work there as a secretary.
Okay.
And I had a very good Catholic school education. Sister Miriam Andre was my favorite nun, and she taught me
Was she
shorthand.
tough like all the nuns were?
She was, but I learned in later years that we were her first class,
Oh, wow.
and she was in her 30s when she
Oh,
joined
wow.
the
So
convent.
she came to it late, yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, Coast Guard headquarters was my first job. And I went from there into private industry for a while.
So you got out of the government service for a while. How long were you with the Coast Guard?
I was there for, I want to say, about 4 years. And I married a Coast Guard
Oh, okay.
officer, and he was transferred to Boston. So
really?
so
you moved to Boston?
Moved to Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Okay. My mom's family is from Cambridge. You know where Harvard Square is?
Right.
Right off of Harvard Square, Sherman Street. They were Italian Americans, and that's where I grew up actually, which is good. So you go to Boston, D.C. to Boston. How'd you like Boston and New England?
Well, in my later life, I also lived in Texas for a while. So if I compare living in Boston, the
Texas.
Boston area, to living in Texas, the Texans are warm, engaging, and the Bostonians are a little
A little
aloof.
standoffish. Okay. Now, how long were you in Boston?
I think 4 years.
Okay. So we go D.C. Coast Guard, go into private enterprise, move up to Boston. Now, were you working in Boston?
I worked for the Newburyport Daily News.
Oh, newspaper business. Good for you. Okay.
And both of my children were born up there.
Oh, they're Bostonian. Really, they're Massachusetts folks.
But I was divorced.
Okay.
And I moved back to Washington.
Okay, so
Moved back
Washington, Boston, back to D.C.,
Right.
back to the Coast Guard?
No, I didn't go back to the Coast Guard. I then went to work for the government again.
Okay.
And I thought that would probably be best for me, especially without a college degree.
Sure.
I needed the security, if
Look,
you
that's
will.
why generations of people did that. You had retirement, you had health care, you had all types of good benefits.
Exactly. And as I look back on it, I'm really glad I did.
Smart decision.
I had
Smart
a
decision.
wonderful, wonderful career. I was very fortunate.
Now, what did you do when you came back from Boston? What agency were you with?
When I came back, I worked in private industry for a
Okay.
little bit, just
Okay.
because a job became available, and then eventually I went back to work for the government. And I wound up working in the White House for 6 years.
Now, when you told me this before you went on air, now, come on, you're dropping the bombs on me. We're in the West Wing. Where are
West
we?
Wing.
Doing what?
Although my first job was in the East Wing.
Okay, now explain for us laymen who only watch TV the difference between the West Wing and the East Wing.
Well, the East Wing is where the military office
Oh,
is,
okay.
the visitor's office, the First Lady's staff,
Oh, okay.
and the Congressional Relations Office.
Okay, so that's the East Wing's responsibilities. Okay.
And how I happened to go there was I was working in private industry, and I got a phone call one day from a woman who said, "You don't know me and I don't know you, but I have a friend who's working in the White House, and my boss said, I don't know where Judy is. She's somewhere on Capitol Hill. Find her."
Really?
So she found me, and I said, I'm not ready to make a move. I like what I'm doing. Just go in and interview with him. Just do me a favor, interview. Well, he offered me the job, and I
Tough
accepted.
to turn down a federal government job in the 50s, I would think.
Well, tough to turn down a job in the White House.
Yes. I mean, come on, just walking around saying you and so what in the world were you doing in the West Wing?
Well, when I first went, I went into the East Wing because
okay,
I went
started
into
out-
congressional relations.
Okay.
There was one little job in there that I didn't mention. I went to work for Larry Hogan,
Yes.
the former governor's father.
Yes. Congressman, he was Congressman Hogan, yes or not?
Yes.
Yes.
I went to work for him. And from that job, I went to work in the East
East
Wing
Wing,
in
okay.
congressional relations.
How did you find that?
I loved it, but a job became available in the press office.
Now,
And-
is that a little more glamorous and high profile? Or what?
Well, you travel
Oh, got to travel.
if you work in the press office.
Oh, so you traveled with the president and the press corps and the support. Oh, wow.
I traveled on the press plane, and somebody asked me one day how I prepared for that job. And I said, well, I didn't really prepare, other than the best training I had was being a mother, because I was responsible for making sure that the press who were traveling with us had everything they needed.
The food, the lodging, and that type of thing?
No,
Oh,
no, another office took care of
Okay.
that part of it, but for them to get their stories back
Oh,
home,
okay.
that was
Transmit
my...
them back to whatever
Yes.
the newspaper or magazine was.
And we didn't have the internet then.
So how did you actually do it?
Well,
No?
well,
Radio?
no, yes, more with the
Radio.
radio.
Speaking into something.
Yeah.
Now, I've got to ask you, who did you meet? I mean, drop a couple names on me. I mean, let's start with the congressional office. Who did you meet? Obviously, Hogan, Congressman. Did you run into any biggies?
I'll tell you one funny
Please?
story.
Go ahead.
I never had anything to do with any of the social occasions in the White House. That just wasn't my
You
area.
had children. Yeah, you had other responsibilities.
But one day, Cary Grant was going to
The
be
Cary Grant
was going to be a guest for a dinner that night
at the White House.
at the White House.
Okay.
I had to see Cary
Oh,
Grant.
yes, ma'am.
I just had to see Cary Grant.
Yes.
So I went over to the where all the guests arrive, and just stood there with there were other staffers
sure.
who were curious
Who wanted to see
too.
Cary Grant? I mean, this
And-
is Hollywood's finest. Right?
Exactly. And in he came, and he was just as handsome
Better
as
looking
I
than he looked on TV
Yes,
movies.
but
Really?
I was so glad that I had done that.
How close? Could you have touched him? Were you that close? Or?
No, probably 10 feet away.
Oh, come on. That's a home run. That's a home run. So you met Cary Grant. Now he just was walking into the reception.
Walking
or
in as a
whatever.
guest for the
Okay.
dinner.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. I will never forget
Oh,
that.
that's pretty amazing, yes.
So when
My
I was
wife's favorite actor to this day still.
Really?
Oh, Cary Grant. Some of his, we won't get, let's talk about you, but he did some comedy things and some
Yes.
Hitchcock things that they just were fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you saw Cary Grant. Who else? Drop
Cary
another name or
Grant.
two.
Well, there were a lot of dignitaries that
Okay.
came to the White House, and if there was press coverage of a meeting with the president or an event, then I probably would be there
Okay.
if it was my responsibility for that particular event.
All right.
We had a good-sized staff.
Now this is, let me make sure, Eisenhower administration or the Kennedy administration, or either or?
Nixon.
Oh, you were in the okay, so we've stepped up a bit.
And
Okay.
Ford.
68 and after. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I got the
Nixon
years
and
now.
Ford. I was
right.
there for 6 years altogether.
Interesting years in the country, in politics,
Oh.
and I can imagine people beeping their horns when they drove by the White House must have driven you crazy, right?
It was
Did you
an
ever see
interest.
Nixon? Did you ever see Nixon?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
all the time.
all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
right.
My office, the press office, once I moved over to the press office, was just right down the hall from.
So you'd see him
The
like
Oval.
you'd see your next door neighbor at Symphony Village or something. Now, the greatest mystery to me in the history of American politics, the one I felt most are Pat Nixon. Did you have anything to do with her?
No, I didn't.
okay.
When the Fords took over, I had some interaction with Betty Ford.
Betty Ford, okay.
But
Pat,
Pat,
no.
well, her office was in
On
the
the other
East
side,
Wing,
yes.
and so
No.
no.
She just remained, she seemed just like she put up with Nixon, okay, for one thing. She put up with America, I mean, 68 to 72, or 74 America was, we were upside down, I thought, for a while. So imagine being a public figure at that time. That's a tough one. Okay, so you saw Nixon, oh, wow. How about President Ford?
President Ford, what a nice man. He was
Yeah.
what the country needed at the time.
He was a great healer, wasn't he, when they got rid of Nixon?
I have to say that when I look back on it, Watergate was like a tea party. When you think about what has happened
Oh, since
that time,
Oh, I know.
Watergate was
nothing.
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 But at the time,
A bunch of dummies broke into a building and they lied about it. Come on. Now, we don't want to get into politics on your show, but now it's like every day you read the paper, or the Post, you get a massive corner.
well, and part of that is 24/7 news
Yes,
too.
it's changed, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has changed.
I mean, and now, the poor press secretaries, was it like it is now? They have to ask questions from where the president had for lunch to what the Ukraine policy is, was it that mad then? Oh,
Yes.
it was.
Yes.
24/7, or had it?
No, well, it wasn't really 24/7
Because
then.
of the news cycle.
Exactly.
Okay.
If the news cycle had been the way it is now, it would have been
been
24/7. Absolutely.
So you worked a regular 9 to 5 type day? Back in the, I guess, 70s?
It was much longer hours.
Yeah.
The secret to my success is that I always volunteered if they needed somebody to
Would you
do
do
something
this and you
extra.
do it?
My hand went up. I volunteered. Tried to be the first person in the office in the morning.
Good.
And frequently I was the last one to leave
Good lesson
at
for
night.
all the young people watching. Right? Work hard, be the early bird, and not gonna hurt.
Exactly.
Besides Cary Grant, any other real biggies in the way? I'm sure seeing Nixon, it's pretty amazing. But were there other characters, events? When the Watergate thing happened, we won't get into the pluses. Was it a depressing thing, or everyone just said, forget it, or what? Did it ruin if you coach a team or lead a team, you've got to be enthusiastic and be a leader. And Nixon and Haig just basically went to the Rose Garden, as I understand it. You tell me.
Yes. And then, of course, Nixon left.
Yes, just took off.
Exactly.
How was the transition, Nixon to Ford, internally?
Easy.
Oh, it was easy.
They, as president and vice president, they had a good working
good,
relationship.
good.
And I have to say, I had a lot of contact with the White House in years after that when I was at the State Department. The White House under Nixon ran like a well-oiled machine.
Oh, it did? Under
Yes.
Nixon? Okay.
Yes.
Because he wanted everything to be like, correct? That was his leadership way.
And he hired people who were that way also.
Okay.
So it really ran like
It
a
ran well. I
well-oiled
didn't know that.
machine.
How about, was Ford more relaxed and laid back?
No.
No, same
No.
thing.
No, his people came in when.
Oh, he was a minority leader, was he not? In the
Yes.
So he was used to leading, yeah.
Yes, and he was a wonderful, kind,
Oh, okay.
nice, really nice man.
Did you have any interaction with him? Oh, you did?
Yes, and I went to Vail 2 Christmases. He
a big
always
skier.
went to Vail. Yes, he was a skier. And I was able to go 2 Christmases and took both of my boys on the press plane. And they were able to ski while I'm working. But one day, the president needed somebody to come over and answer the phone. Whoever was there from his immediate staff wasn't available that day. And so I spent the day.
And his house, a chalet or whatever
He rented a house from
Okay.
a friend of his.
Okay.
And anyway, I was able to be there all day, and it was interesting because I did have some interaction with him. He was in and out, but what a kind, nice man.
I always thought before he got a bum steer, here's an All-American football player at Michigan, athletic, trim guy, golfer, skier. He falls on a ramp one day and he got this whole clumsy thing, which was not true. This man, fantastic shape from what it looks like, and he was an All-American foot. This is
Right.
to be labeled. Oh, he's kind of a clumsy fuddy-duddy. Not true. I don't think.
Compared to the current president.
Well, yeah. Well, it's just that he was. He's an All-American football player. I mean, at some point he was a great athlete. Okay, so you're at. Now, how long did you stay at the West Wing?
I was in the White House for 6 years.
Oh, 6 years.
Altogether.
Now, how did you go from West Wing to State Department?
When it was time for me to leave the White House,
Now, when you say you wanted to leave, they wanted you to leave, how did that go?
Ron Nesson was
Yes, I know. Okay.
press secretary.
Okay.
And he called me into his office the day that my immediate boss, who was his deputy, the day that my boss left the White House to go into private industry.
Okay.
As soon as he was gone, Ron Nesson buzzed me, and I went up into his office, and he said, I have been told I have to cut my staff
Really?
by a couple of people, and because Jack isn't here anymore, my boss,
Right.
he said, you're one of
You're it. No, you had nobody really kind of go to bat for you in some ways, right? Yes?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I left, and several months went by when I was unemployed. It was kind of a dark period of my life because I had
so
2 children.
you actually, I mean, literally done. Okay. And you've got kids.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of the order
Sure,
of
take your
things.
time.
I got a phone call from somebody who said, I have a job. No,
Oh, good.
it didn't work that way. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry. I'm trying to
No,
organize
come on.
my
Don't
mind
worry
as
about
to
it.
what exactly happened.
Well, let me just be, while you were thinking, how
Yeah.
long was this period between being let go and this phone call you're about to talk
And
about?
when I finally was employed, I think it was about 3 months.
Oh, that's tough. Isn't it?
And I was
That's
in the
tough.
unemployment line in Washington, D.C.
that's
with
just
all
tough.
the
That's
unemployed
miserable. Oh, that's tough.
construction workers, and oh my gosh.
It takes, it hurts. I went through that after I got a graduate degree. The country was doing a recession. It just dehumanizes you. But anyway, go ahead. So you're out
does.
of work 3 months.
But State Department.
Did they? So it was just a call out of the blue? Come work for us, or were you you were GS what at that point?
At that point, I was probably an 11. I was a 14 when I retired, so I was probably an 11.
But they were allowed to just fire you like this?
I was a political
Oh,
appointee.
okay. That's a whole different ball. Yeah, whole
Then
different.
they can fire you.
Of course.
for-
You don't have the GS rating where you have all the protection. So
Right.
anyway, State Department, someone calls you.
And there is a job at the State Department.
This is in
And
Foggy Bottom.
Yes,
Right.
Al Haig had become
Yes.
Secretary of State.
Yes. He thought he was president, but he was Secretary of State.
His secretary was a woman who I had worked with in the White House
Okay.
when he was in the White House.
Yes.
And I called her and I said, you're not going to be at the State Department without me. I want to come to the State Department.
good.
And it turned out that the first press spokesman at the State Department under Al Haig was a Time magazine reporter who I knew from my White House days. And he hired me because he
Good for you.
wanted my level of experience.
Yeah, was that a GS or was that a political party?
That was GS.
Oh, so now you're in the federal service.
Well, I've always been GS, whether it was political
okay.
or career.
Oh, okay.
So that's the difference,
Okay.
political appointee or
Are
career.
you career now, or are you still political?
No, I'm still political.
Oh, you're still political?
Yeah.
Okay. So what in the world did you do with the State Department?
The State Department, I traveled all over the world
Oh, give me a couple countries.
with 5 secretaries of state.
5 secretaries.
5 secretaries of state.
Who was your favorite? Between Al Haig and Schultz?
Well,
who
it was
there?
Haig, George Schultz,
Right.
Larry Eagleburger,
Okay.
Warren Christopher.
Okay.
There's another one.
Now he was Carter's.
Schultz,
Christopher's.
Baker, Jim Baker.
Oh yeah, Senator Baker. Yes.
I think probably if I had a favorite, George Schultz.
Oh, yeah. Nice man. Because he's real nice.
Yes.
Oh, was he really? Okay.
Yes.
Makes a difference, doesn't it? I don't care if it's the State Department or Queen Anne's County Board of Education. If you're nice to people and a nice person, guess what? People are going to work harder.
Exactly.
So tell me about all these countries. I mean, this is great.
Well, I spent a lot of time in the Middle East.
Okay. Israel, Saudi Arabia. Who'd you meet? Did you meet prime ministers or what level were you? Just all press type people?
It was, well, Nelson Mandela.
Oh, wait. Okay, another bomb. You said he was.
Nelson
I remember
Mandela.
a couple of weeks ago at the Veterans meeting, you said, "Will you tell me about Nelson Mandela?" I'll be quiet.
He was at the State Department for a function.
Oh, so he's here in the USA. Okay.
And he was there for a function. And my boss needed to get a message up to the diplomatic rooms, which is where Nelson Mandela was. And so he asked me if I would take it up.
Oh, take a note to Nelson Mandela.
No, wasn't
Oh.
taking a note to
Okay.
him, but he happened to be talking to my boss when
Okay.
I took the message up. The message was going to my boss. And Nelson, he had the most wonderful smile.
Yeah. Big man, little man,
Big.
big. Oh, 6
Yeah.
foot.
Not
big.
not overweight,
Oh,
not
oh,
heavy,
okay.
but just the most
presence.
wonderful smile. When he smiled,
Really?
I can see where his family could never be mad at him if he smiled at
He
them.
had that
He
look.
just had one
Sounds
of
like a
those.
Seinfeld episode. Remember the Seinfeld episode with the young woman who smiled and got out of parking tickets in jail just by smiling at people? Did you actually interact? I mean, you really interacted with him?
I just said excuse me
Oh,
to him, and he said that's all right. He just was
Very gracious.
gracious. Yes, he was gracious.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think.
Who else did you run into? I mean,
Who
you can't-
else?
Probably can't top that one. How about when you overseas travels? Okay, who would you have dealt with in Israel? Or again, is it just all press? Did you see a prime minister or anybody?
It was mostly, yeah, I would see the prime minister because the secretary would always meet with the prime minister.
Right.
So I would see him, but I really didn't have
That wasn't your function
interaction.
to deal with it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Now, of all the places you went in the world, as a state, did you have a place where you said, "Oh, I hope get to go there again"? I mean, was it the Mideast or Africa or Europe? Or?
I would say the Mideast is
Okay.
probably my favorite. I don't know that I'd want to go there
A
today.
little tough now. Is that because of the people or the environment? I mean, the physical environment or the food or the what?
I think just the fact that the culture is so different from
Okay.
ours,
Okay.
and it was interesting to me to be in a totally different environment.
Right. Now, were you expected to cover up as women do in the Mideast or not, as an American working with the American press?
Yes, we were always told before we went into the country what things were not acceptable.
Okay, okay. So probably no alcohol,
Right.
had to wear some type of cover or not?
We only had to do that if we were in a mosque.
Okay.
And we
As a
did.
courtesy to the religion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How about, did you have to be escorted by mail at all times?
No.
Oh, no. Okay, so that was not.
No.
Okay.
And I have to say, in every country in the Middle East, I was always treated with the utmost respect.
Good. I mean, as a woman or as an American?
As a woman, and well, I think the people I interacted with knew that I was there with the Secretary of State.
They don't mess around.
Yeah, but I was always treated with respect. The Syrians were a little marginal.
Shaky. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of the Mideast, is there a favorite food you ran into? I mean, did the shish kebab or the tofu, or did something just say, I can't wait to go back to Israel or Saudi Arabia or something to have this to eat? Or,
No.
it was all good. It was all different.
Not really. And because of the hours that I worked, having normal meals.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a catch can out of boxes and get a sandwich, or?
A lot of times it was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So of all the people, it sounds like George Schultz, top of the scale, Gerald Ford, just kind people. How about women? What strong, interesting women did you run into? I mean, did you have Goldie Meyer? I mean, the Indian prime? No, okay.
No, I think more of the people I traveled with than the people who were on the ground.
Who'd you give me some? I mean, like reporters? You mean?
Yes.
Yeah, give me an example.
Barbara Walters.
Oh, you met Barbara Walters. Mm-hmm. Tell me about Barbara Walters.
Barbara Walters was the hardest working female reporter, and the other one was Diane Sawyer.
Really?
But Diane Sawyer worked in the White House press office.
Right.
So I got to know Diane from the White House.
Oh, so she was an employee before she became a reporter. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Mm-hmm. But Barbara Walters was an amazingly hard worker.
Very, very.
Okay. Friendly person? Or?
Yes, she was. Okay. We would be on the plane at night. Mm-hmm. The rest of the press are sleeping on the plane. Barbara Walters has her...
She's working.
She got a 3-ring binder that we prepared for the press who were traveling with us with all the information about what we were doing in each country. And Barbara Walters would be studying that 3-ring binder.
Preparing herself for interviews.
While everybody else is sleeping.
Amazing. And the important thing, she was Diane Sawyer, also a pleasant person?
Yes.
Okay. And well, they're the top of their tray, right? They're the top of the iceberg.
And Diane, I think, must have a photographic memory.
Oh, really? She can
my gosh.
For people's faces, you mean, or events, or what?
Anything she read, she's brilliant.
Oh, she just picked it right up and could discuss it and
Absolutely.
evaluate it.
And I see why CBS hired her when she left the White House.
Oh, she's that good. She's that good?
Absolutely that good.
How about first, now I realize you've said the First Lady's East Wing, but of your whole time at the White House, I'm jumping back to the White House. Oh, it could be State Department too. Any White House, I mean, Betty Ford or Rosalind Carter, or did any of them stick out? Probably didn't have much to do with them, it sounds like.
Well, I will tell you that Susan Ford was in...
The daughter.
Yeah,
yes.
She was in high school when he was president.
Yes.
And she frequently would come home from school and she'd come through the West Wing, and if I wasn't busy at the time, she'd sit on the edge of my desk and talk to me about her day at school. And
because mom's traveling, dad's probably traveling. You were a surrogate mother. Oh, very good. Nice kid.
Oh, sure. Very.
There was a couple boys and a couple
girls? 2 boys
yes.
and Susan.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she just wanted somebody to talk to about, hey, Mom, guess what I did in school today, type thing. Oh, okay. Well, that was a unique experience. You know you got to write a book. All the veterans, we have, you meet with a group every Monday. We have people, not only warriors, but places they've been, like yourself, people they've met. Well, you have in Symphony Village, I met the man at Dunkin' Donuts. He was a member of the White House press corps. Do you know who I'm talking about? Oh, well, we'll hook you up on Monday. There's a gentleman that comes to Dunkin' Donuts with Bob Nielsen, who you know, who was a member of years of the press corps. I'm sure you've dealt with him.
Gary Folks.
Is that who it is? Yeah, he's my age or a little bit older.
Gary went to Mackin High School.
Oh, as a Mackin too?
When I was a freshman, he was a senior.
Oh, wow.
And then he went to work for Hearst.
Okay.
So
And he was, I mean, he talks when you're at Dunkin' Donuts, he's dropping like Hague, he'd mention Hague and this and that in person. Okay. How about any Kennedy sightings? Or I mean, I realized at that point, tragically, we lost the president. And Teddy Kennedy bopping to see because he was a powerful senator for a while? Or
no.
No reason they'd come. You deal with them, right? Even with the congressional thing. How about the Governor Hogan's dad? A nice man, Congressman Hogan?
Very. And the governor at the time, when I worked for his dad, the governor was probably about 8 years old. And when he became governor, and I'm living back in the state of
Current
Maryland,
man running for Senate.
I really wanted to be able to tell him,
I knew you when you were 8 years old.
yes, and that I had worked for his father.
Oh, you should do that. He'll campaign around here.
I think he will now.
And you know who'll help you with that? Next time you see Jim Moran,
Exactly.
tell him, say, Jim, look at, when is he coming through? And Jim will walk you right up on the stage. Oh, Hogan would love that story. That would be a great story.
Well, I will tell you that when I went to work for his father, I was only there 3 or 4 months when I got this call about the White House job. And when I got the call, I said, I really like working for my own congressman. And that's when she said, no, just go in for the interview. Well, I felt terrible having to tell the congressman after only being there 3 or 4 months. So I got to the office first thing before he arrived, and when he arrived, I said, I have to talk to you before the day gets started. And he said, okay. So I went in his office and sat down, and I told him the story, what happened. I said, I didn't go looking for this job, but I got this phone call. He got up from his chair.
He hugged you and said, good luck.
Never forget this. He came around, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, Judy, if they offered me a job on the White House staff, I would give up my congressional seat.
Good for him.
You have to do this. And we stayed in touch for a long time after that.
Oh, wow. Now, you know, something I've missed, we only got about 2 minutes left. I told you it'd be the fastest half an hour of your life. When you were working at the State Department, I realize you're traveling a lot. Where were you actually living? Were you in Northwest at that point? Where were you actually living in D.C.? So this would be, what, 70s, 80s? Does that sound right?
By that time, I was living in the suburbs in Silver Spring.
Oh, okay. I went to Walt Whitman High School, Montgomery Blair, you know, and all those. Oh, so you were a Montgomery County person for a while.
Right.
Oh, you had the best of both worlds, all right? Well, look, our time's about up. First of all, you got to write a book. I mean, I started and I stopped. In the group that meets on Monday, there's 10 books. Clint, you know, the young man who sits at the end of the table. The audience, I apologize, there's about 25 veterans I met. He was in so many combat situations with terrorists. I mean, the type of, you could write a book. I mean, come on, if you can write a book, I'm talking about Alexander Haig, the Ford, Susan Ford, that type of thing. It's a bestseller. I guarantee, I want 10%. Okay. Well, look, this is the fastest half an hour, all right? Thank you for coming on the show, okay?
Thank you.
And thank you for coming to all the Monday meetings. Poor Judy she comes in, she leads a group of 25 hardcore veterans to pledge every time. She volunteers herself for a committee to set up an event next year. We really appreciate that, okay?
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. My name's Fred McNeil. Thank you for watching QAC TV7. My time's up. Thank you for your time, and we're going to see you next time.